Dr. Jazz.
About this new project, I saw this migration of silence into and out of the tone world, and it's an immense thing you did, and I mean it's huge, the amount of work. And I wanted to ask you, in what period was this recorded? And
it was recorded in 20. The 20 was the latest recording. Was done 2020 January. And 2019 and 2020.
Wow.
Most of the recordings were done.
So, but it's like 10 hours of music, right?
About, yeah.
Almost.
There's about an hour on each CD, yeah.
Yeah. How did you get an idea for this project? I mean, what's the idea behind it? Like,
well, I had released a record called Voices Fall from the Sky last year. Previously, that was a 3 CD set. And I'd want to release 10 CDs at that time, but I didn't. That was more like an anthology.
Yeah.
That was more like some things from the past, which can always be re-released, because a lot of the music you do never gets the proper shelf life and can be easily fall in the cracks.
Yeah.
So I re-released that, and then the idea was to, in my head, was to do a box set I already did something called Wood Flute Songs, which was 8 CDs. And the idea is that I do a lot of stuff, and it mounts up.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I've got enough stuff to do at least 3 more 10 record sets.
Oh, shit. Wow.
And the only problem with it is, you can't just release too much, then it gets flooded.
Yeah.
But so the idea was to release all this vocal music, and it was supposed to be all vocal. And then I included the string music at the last minute. And then, of course, the Fastest Train, which is something that's dear to me, with the musicians in Rotterdam, Klaas Heckman and Koen Albert, where we explore bamboo flutes and nose flute and different instruments that come out of wood and bamboo, and that have skins, some drums in there. So those 2 CDs, that CD was added, the string CD, and the 1 CD that was taken out was a duo with an alto player, Bia Labracobra, who's actually from Slovenia. And that will be released that's being remixed and going to be released later on. I don't know how, but it's going to be released.
Oh, wow, super.
Maybe in 2022. And so that's it's just a wealth of material that you have to let out, all at once. And it's kind of connected, a lot of it.
Yeah. And nowadays, I guess it's also easier since you have so many more channels, like, let's say, Bandcamp, right? It's not only about waiting for a label. I mean,
well, I guess I don't know too much about that. I mean, I know Stephen Jorg, who does from Own Fidelity, who does the marketing on the record. He has a lot of good things to say about Bandcamp, because they actually pay musicians.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Do articles and promote the music. So I know something's happening, because we sold out of all the CDs we made. It's all sold out, and they're doing a second pressing right now.
Oh, wow, super.
So that's good.
That's good. That's happening. And I also read, I mean, like, you also wrote the lyrics. I mean, there's a lot of vocal tracks on it. And years ago, I studied poetry, and I did like postgraduate studies on American poetry. And I also translated so many African American poets, actually an anthology of them into Slovenian, like 27 of them. And I love all these guys like Michael S. Harper and Quincy Troop. And I read one poem, which is so beautiful. You wrote "Music is the Dance." I think, and music is the dance and the dancer also. That there are some incredible lines in there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you approach writing poetry? Actually, I mean, where do you get ideas? Or
Well, I mean, I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, New York time. So I get up early every day and I do different things. I've been painting, I've been writing music, I've been writing poetry. There's no real method because I don't really have any deadlines.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, I've got 2 new CDs coming out, LPs coming out. One called Mayan Space Station with Ava Mendoza and on guitar and Gerald Cleaver on
yeah,
drums.
I saw you guys. Yeah, you played on on one jazz fest, like virtual.
Yeah, Macedonia.
Skopje. Yeah, I saw that. It's
And
beautiful.
so we have a album that we're preparing. So I had to write a poem for the back cover of that. So when I've got to write something, and I just begin writing, and then I write a little bit more, and then edit, and write a little bit more, then edit. And when it's right, you sort of know. But now it's finds its placement rather quickly. And I don't like get writer's block or anything like that. You know, it's always because there is a method. It's almost like sculpting. You start with a big block and you sculpt down till it begins to sing back at you and resound back at you. The same with musical composition.
Yeah.
You start with some sounds and then you take away, you add until it begins to glow. And once it begins to glow, then you kind of leave it alone and then you add a little bit more. And then later on, you might tweak it a little bit, but basically that's it. It's sort of, you planted the seed and it grew up. So, I mean, that's the only method that you keep working at it. And when you do have to do something like writing music or building something with wood, you do it every day.
Yeah.
Until it's done. You know, you do it, you work on it, you'll know how to do it without taking away the magical part of it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the key, is that you don't want to know everything necessarily if that's the way you work, but you don't want to take the magical part out of the experience.
Yeah, I guess if you love it, it comes there automatically with it, right? Because
we hope so.
Yeah. You mentioned composing. I wanted to ask you this, like when I listen to your compositions, like it's always about the melody, at least for me. I mean, sometimes with a bass groove, but like all your compositions are so much based on melody, you know, like how do you start a composition? Like where do you get the ideas for melody? Like usually just...
Well, you know, maybe in the 70s, I studied the Hopi Indians with a guy named, it was a book we were studying out of Frank Waters' Book of the Hopi, and with a guy named Krall Lombard, we call him Pelican. And one of the things that we went over was the clans. The Hopi Indians had clans. They had an owl clan, a bear clan, a reindeer clan, an eagle clan, a snake clan. And what I found out over the years is that musicians also have clans. And if you notice certain musicians, like Johnny Hodges, he always played a melody. Yeah. He always played slow and painted a beautiful, you know, image. Yeah. Joe McPhee, you know, when things are going, always Joe can pick up his instrument and just do a clear, beautiful bird floating through, sailing through the clouds, and find some, you know, an oasis. So I figured that I come from the melody clan. Even when I try to get away from melody, I feel that there's 2 things I relate to: rhythm and blues and melody very strongly. And even when I was playing, what people say, well, you're playing the avant-garde or out music. No, I was playing rhythm and blues. if you listen to me, if you take out, I was playing with Cecil Taylor,
Yeah, sure.
what I was playing, if you take out everything else and bring up the bass, you see that I was playing rhythms, and I was going from one rhythm to another rhythm to another rhythm to another rhythm with a pulsation and a movement. I was dancing with rhythm. And in my music, or the music that's coming through me, it's really full of melody. So people can go home and sing the melody when they're sad to uplift them.
Yeah.
And that's the reason for melody, is that you want to have something that you can recall that will uplift you.
Yeah.
And it also works with feelings. It also works with feeling. It also works with experiences. When I used to play with Derek Bailey.
Yeah.
And when I first played with Derek Bailey, we started playing together. And then I said, whoa, aren't we gonna play some Wes Montgomery, man? What are you doing, man? And he just started laughing. And what I learned after 2 minutes of playing with Derek Bailey is that melody manifests itself in different ways. Broken melody, pieces of melody, fallen melody, explosive melody. And that melody was the same thing as rhythm. And rhythm and melody was, the feet of rhythm and melody was harmony.
Yeah.
And so basically, to play with Derek Bailey, I had to just be myself. And we're like two parallel parts of a track. He was totally himself, totally myself. And the thing that what Derek Bailey told me, he said to me once that I was the only person that really plays free jazz, because jazz has not left what I play, and you're playing free jazz.
Yeah.
Everyone else has gone over and taken all the jazz out of the music, but you leave the jazz in there.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And I'm not consciously saying, well, I'm trying to leave jazz in the music. I'm just being what it is, what I am, and they're being what they are. If you come from the mountains where they play a certain kind of folk music, and then you begin to play that, and it comes out in your music because you come from the mountains where they play folk music. I mean, play with Don Cherry, and Don Cherry would go to Turkey and learn Turkish folk songs.
Yep.
He'd go to India and learn Indian folk songs. He'd play an African tune. He'd play a melody from China. He'd play a blues line. He had an encyclopedic memory of Ornette Coleman tunes. So Don, that was Don.
Yeah.
Now, other people, they say they don't want to be near a tune. They say, keep those tunes away from me. I don't want to play no tunes. Better get out of here with those tunes. And all of this is respected because it's all equal, and it's no like saying, well, this music that has no melody.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to have a melody. I'm the melody.
Yeah.
Because I'm a human being playing the music. I'm the melody. So every music has melody. It has everything that you need, because the people who play it have that. So, so in me, I use a lot of melodies and a lot of rhythms, and to project the music and really get the dance going, as they say.
Yeah, it's so beautiful what you mentioned with Derek, that it's like the same, those records you did with Bill Dixon and Barry Guy and Tony Oxley. Those guys are kind of in the European tradition, and you and Bill are in this other tradition, but somehow it all blends together because you're doing your own thing, but at the same time you're a unity, and I love that so much. And
listen, if I took and this is what we use as universal tonality. If I took a baby from China, a baby from Russia, a baby from Brazil, a baby from Minnesota, a baby from Alabama, a baby from Canada, and say, come on, guys, we're going to go to the park. And we all got in the park, and everybody's playing. Boom. Yeah. And then and then if I recorded everybody crying, and then I said, okay, now, I want you to name the baby from Russia crying. Oh boy, can't do that. The baby from China. The universal languages, they all laugh the same. They all cry the same.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they all play together. And that's where we come together. I mean, that's music, the universal language, where we don't have to speak the same language, but we are all human beings, and we can hear and we can play together and contribute if we allow everybody to be themselves.
Yeah, that's really important. Yeah, that's beautiful. But I wanted to ask you, you hear this so much on this last record, you guys. I talked with Gerald about that, the Welcome Adventure, Volume 1, with Matthew Shipp and Daniel Carter. It's so swinging. I mean, I spoke to Gerald, like I said, you two guys, like as a rhythm section, are amazing. You're like water. Just, you know, and I've played with Gerald a couple of times, and it's so much fun to play with him. And I wanted to ask you, we spoke with him about Roscoe Mitchell. Roscoe told him one advice, like how to improvise freely. He said, like, do not follow, and that you kind of told him jokingly also this, like how to improvise. And I wanted to ask you that actually, how do you make the improvisation so freely, so flowingly? Especially, let's say, as a rhythm section with Gerald, for instance.
Well, first of all, you don't have anything preset before you play.
Yeah.
You know, everything is empty, and you're trying to really play in real time, not practice something all week and then you're going to play what you practice when it comes time to play, but really try to play in real time and in the moment. And then see if you can use magnetic flow to capture things. And you don't know what you're going to capture, because every time we play, I don't have any idea where we're going and what we're going to do. But every time, using the same 12 sounds, or you play in between the sounds, you know, and it comes out differently.
Yeah.
Every time, you know, and then like what you played on Monday that worked, you try to play the same thing on Tuesday, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because it's like for the moment, you can't play Monday's music Tuesday. You got to find Tuesday's music.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday at 1:00 p.m. and then you play again at 4:00, you got to find 4:00 music. Then you got to find 6:00 music and 7:00 music and 8:00 music. You can't be repeating yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to train yourself to be open and to really, believe it or not, you have to train yourself to not know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of training yourself to know what you're doing, but to train yourself to not know what you're doing. You know, who said this? Oh, Bill Dixon said this once, that, you know, like when a little kid plays, he's playing free. But now the second time he plays, he's already learned something from playing the first time.
Yeah.
And then so he's a little less free. And then the third time he's trying to put things together, and then the fourth time, and every time you're trying to put things together, because our nature is, one part of our nature is, it's hard for us not to repeat ourselves and want to play what worked. But the idea is to not repeat what works, is to try to play the unknown.
Yeah.
No, it's what you don't know whether it's going to work or not. And then once you keep doing that, you find that, okay, I accept this. You know, I accept this way, and it works.
Yeah. But how do you, you know, I remember like 2 years ago, we had a tour with Tony Malaby, and, you know, he's in this same, you know, Tamarindo that you guys have, the band had. This is exactly what you're saying. And we played with Tony, and exactly what you said. We played on Monday a gig, and, you know, it was amazing impros. And then on Tuesday, I wanted to go in the same zone, and Tony just didn't go there. He didn't even play, you know, and I was like, oh. And then we spoke about it, and he actually said the same thing. But how to train yourself to do that? I mean, do you have some advice how to unlearn yourself?
is to, well, I'm not saying don't go to music school, but the
Yeah.
thing
Okay.
is to keep everything in perspective.
Mm.
And remember, there are no rules, and every rule and law and idea in music can be broken.
Yeah.
There's no right and there's no wrong. So it's like, okay, you played the blues changes. Okay, now you're going to play them again the next day? I don't think so. I think that you have to be open to what's going on in the moment, and you just stop when you hear yourself playing the same thing. You
Yeah.
stop and go in a different direction.
Yeah.
Okay, you can practice being open by practice being open. You know, and
Yeah.
I think that's very important to, you tell students to every day play something different. When you find yourself playing playing the same thing, then make sure the same thing comes out different.
Yeah. Well, that's
Until
beautiful.
you get to the point where you realize that even when you play the same thing, it's going to be different because it's different anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's impossible to play the same thing.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
That's beautiful. What you said now. Yeah. It's true. But can I ask you, like, on this last record with, how did you first of all meet Matthew Shipp? When did you? I know those first records in the early '90s, Points, but how did you guys hook up? You have such an amazing telepathy also together.
Well, I think Matthew, according to the way he tells it, he heard me on a Cecil Taylor record
Yeah.
called Calling at the Eighth. He was in Delaware, and he said, okay, I'm going to come to New York and see what's going on. Maybe I'll find William and other players to play with.
Yeah.
And then when he came, I saw him on the street, and we hooked up and we played. So there was nothing like, well, how did it work? It just worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same thing happened in 1972 when I played, or 71 when I played with Daniel Carter. We just played and it worked. And that's how it is. It either works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's with everybody I ever met and played with. Billy Bang, David Ware, Roy Campbell.
Yeah.
Where you have a lasting musical relationship, and you could not play for 10 years and then come back and play, and it's just like you just left off where you stopped 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. It's really a good system, good system.
You mentioned like the '70s, and like, how did let's say we're talking about the late '60s. How did you learn to do that, to start improvising so freely? I mean, who were like your first starts into the scene? I mean, like in that time.
The first bass player I met and talked to was Charlie Hayden.
Oh, wow.
1968 or so. And, he told me, he said, I didn't really go to music school. So, what you should do is just put on records and play along with records and, go to jam sessions and, listen and play. And so there was that idea. Then there was the idea of, like you have periods, you do that. Then you start stepping outside, to play at jam sessions, and you figure out, how these standard tunes are hooked up. And then you do a little studying, which I did. I studied up at the Jazzmobile School with Richard Davis and Milt Hinton and Arthur Davis. And you learn a little something there. Then I went to Jimmy Garrison, to his house, and studying with him. And then I studied with Ware.
How was it like with those guys? Like
it
with
was
Jimmy
good.
Garrison?
I learned something from everybody. The main lesson I learned was, of course, from Wilbur. Because Wilbur would play something, then I'd play it, and if I played it the way he played it, he said, that's wrong.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And then he'd hand the bass back to me, and then he'd play something, then I played it, he said, that's wrong again. Then if he played something, and then I played it my way, he said, that's right. And then he said, don't you ever try to sound like me. The student should not sound like the teacher. You're supposed to do your own thing.
Yeah.
And I said to Wilbur, do you know anything about music? And he looked at me and he says, "What's music?" And then I said, "Well, I can ask you another question. When you was playing with Monk, did he tell you what to do?" And he said, "No, he told me to play anything I want to play."
Yeah.
And that's how it's been. That's the relationship is that you've got to find your own voice and then go through the ropes, whatever those ropes may be, pay the dues, play with this one, play with that one, learn from here, learn from over there, until you can put two and two together.
Yeah.
And then feel you can make a contribution to the music, not just stand there and be following, as they say, and just kind of being led on, but that you have to move the music. When I first played with Cecil Taylor in 1981 December, my first impression was, wow, he's playing all the parts. Then after a few seconds, I said, no, wait a second, nobody can play all the parts. So I said, well, I better get with it. And then I began to get with it. I said, I found all the parts that he wasn't playing, and that was just basically being myself.
Yeah.
So I had to say, I'm gonna push him and add to the music, and that's what you got to do: push people, add to the music. The same when I was playing with Rashid Ali and Charles Gale, or Kid Jordan.
Yeah.
Playing with Milford Graves, and different saxophone players, Anthony Braxton, Kid Jordan, Charles Gale. And the idea is that with Milford, it was a groove. What you want to do is me and him had to get into a groove. And it was usually like based off a Latin jazz groove, where the rhythms and meters change very quickly.
Yeah.
And the drums were talking, he was bringing tones out, and we had a language. We had a vocal language with the drums and the bass. So again, I just spoke about Derek Bailey. That was another concept. Peter Brutzman was another concept. And I used to play with Don Cherry and Allen Ginsberg. That was another concept.
Wow.
Because Allen Ginsberg was playing that harmonium, and he was doing his poetry, and Don was playing a little trumpet, electric piano. And so again, it's like immediately analyzing the situation, what it is, and then what you're going to do between the time you take off the bass cover, because sometimes there's no rehearsal, and the time you hit the first downbeat. You have to immediately find out what the story is and what's going on, and add to it and embellish it and let it have a life of its own. Yeah.
That's beautiful. You mentioned Cecil, William, and I wanted to ask you, like, how did you start playing with him? When did you meet him, and how did your story begin? I mean, you've done so many records together.
I met Cecil in 1973.
Oh, already? Wow.
And I was playing with a group called Ensemble Moncur with Arthur Williams and Jamil Moondock. And at that time, I think it was Rashid Sanan or Rashid Bakar. And Cecil was rehearsing a concert for Carnegie Hall. And so Arthur Williams brought me down to Cecil's house and introduced me to Cecil. And I began making rehearsals for Carnegie Hall. And we did Carnegie Hall, I think, in March of '74.
Wow.
And we were opposite the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. This was a concert produced by George Wein. And we rehearsed every single day. Every single day. At the end, probably the last week, Sonny Murray came in, Andrew Cyril came in, Marvin Hannibal Peterson came in.
Yeah. Wow.
Sharon Freeman. I brought in Joe Bowie and Charles Tyler to the rehearsal. So you could bring people to the rehearsal. And a lot of people came and didn't stay, but we ended up doing the concert. I don't know if there's a tape of it. Maybe someone's got a tape of it somewhere. But, and then in 1980, when I was playing, I know in 1975, I played with Don Cherry at the 5 Spot for a week. And Cecil was at that gig. And so I spoke to him there. And then in 1980, October, November, he heard me play at the Tin Palace with Rafe Malik, the trumpet player,
Yeah.
Glenn Spearman, and Rashid Bakar. And in December of 1980, he hired me for the unit.
Yeah.
And I think I stayed there from that, for about 11 years, something like that.
Wow. Like, how was it like to play with him? What did you learn from him? Him being as a band leader. I mean, how was that like for you?
Well, I learned that basically I could do anything I wanted to do. He never told you what to play.
Mm.
He didn't say, I want you to play like this. It's nothing about his style. He gave his notes out and his melodic and harmonic structures that he was playing on the piano, but it was just so that you knew what they were in case you ran into them,
Wow.
and in case you wanted to deal with it. But basically, he hired you to be yourself. I remember Cecil, we had a trumpet player in the band, and he came up to Cecil and said, well, I don't know if I can play these notes, might be too high, the intervals too wide for me. And Cecil told him, well, just play the notes you like. And I said, well, okay, that's what it's about. It's about hiring the individual, writing for the players.
Yeah.
Some musicians, like when Frank Wright was in the band, Frank didn't have any written music. Frank was basically the continuing soloist in the band. Jimmy could interpret all the notes and bring super duper life to the music, but Jimmy died in 86. So Jimmy was only with Jimmy for 5 years playing, but Jimmy was a fantastic musician. And
such a
one of the closest musicians to the sound of Charlie Parker there was. Was Jimmy Lyons. Very much into that. And every once in a while he'd play a little bird for us. But basically it was it was a great experience. I mean, I just learned to be myself and to not make any sacrifices.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was playing with Cecil, I was playing with Bill Dixon.
Yeah.
And I was playing with Billy Bang. I was playing with Rachel Moncur III. I was playing with Sonny Murray.
Yeah.
I was playing with Dave Burrell. I was always keeping up a multi-dimensional schedule because Cecil didn't work all the time. So you had to work with other people.
Yeah.
And so I always work with other people, work with Gene Lee a lot, going to Hampel, and, like I say, Rashid Ali and Charles Gale, and By Any Means Necessary, that group. And so also in 1980, I started working with the European guys, started going over to Europe and dealing with FMP, Free Music Production.
Yeah.
Peter Koval, Peter Brodsman, Enrico Rava, Tomas Stenko, Evan Parker. I mean, Connie Bauer, Hannes Bauer, you name it. I played with them, and it was great. Everybody was great. Everyone had their own language and their own way of doing things, and it was fun. I mean, I tell you the truth. I mean, right now I miss going to Europe. I wish I was over there. I mean, I really miss it because it was really, it's sort of like what I would say, unfinished business in Europe. So I can't wait to go over there again and play some more.
Yeah, definitely.
Travel and get this music to the people. But also, I want us to work in America because America is culturally underdeveloped. And if we keep going to Europe all the time and not develop America, we're going to be in trouble. I mean, that's one of the reasons Trump got elected, because we're culturally way down.
Yeah,
we're way down. We're operating at diminished capacity.
Is that one of the reasons? Is that one of the reasons why you kind of co-started the Arts for Art, or like with this idea also?
Well, the Arts for Art started 25 years ago.
Yeah, but
and I didn't start it. Patricia Nicholson started it, but we were a group, and part of it was to fill some gaps culturally. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, to answer that question without going into another dimension there. That's why it was started, to try to fill some of the gaps of what was lacking here in New York as far as gigs.
Yeah.
and playing, because it's the only festival in the United States that's been going on for 25 years that deals with creative music
Yeah,
on a high
it's
level.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. But you mentioned Europe and going to Europe. When was the first time you went to Europe? With whom
I
was
went
that?
to Europe 1978 with Jamil Moondock and
Oh,
Roy
wow.
Campbell.
Wow.
No, it was not. I'm sorry, Jamil Moondock, Billy Bang, and myself went over. We
Oh,
picked
really?
up a drummer, Anthony Brown, and we went to Holland, and it was a great trip.
Yeah.
We were smoking. That's when our chops were up. I mean,
Wow.
we were taking no prisoners at that time. You know,
How was that
now then
experience like?
after a while you start getting a little you want to start playing some music and doing this and doing that. But in those days we were just like straight ahead, no chaser. I
Yeah.
love it, and I think we're gonna get back to that soon.
Yeah.
Straight ahead, no chaser.
Yeah. It's beautiful. But can I ask you, William? Also, you mentioned Kid Jordan before, and I love that record Blue Winter you guys did with Fred Anderson talking about underrated
Oh yeah,
guys.
that's a classic.
Such a player. I mean, the records in the 60s he did with Joseph Jarman and all those. I mean, that's incredible. But how was it to play with Fred? Like, how did you hook
Fred
up
was
with
just
him?
wonderful. He's just a wonderful human being and a wonderful player. I mean, he would practice every day. Whenever I
Wow.
get in Chicago, he'd be at the Velvet Lounge practicing in the afternoon. So I go to the Velvet Lounge and knock on the door, and he's in there. He let me in, and then he'd ask me. He said, "Well, William, what you got for me today?" And he always wanted, because I used to tell him stories about Calipariusa, this one or that one. And so after he got through practicing, we'd have something to eat, and I'd tell him some New York stories, and he'd love it. And then we'd go back and then come back that night and play. So it was really, really, really great. I mean, Fred had that magic. He had to crouch, he'd go down low, and Kid Jordan would come up high.
Yeah,
And
that's
once
beautiful.
they did that, it was like they were locked in. You couldn't. Whew,
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah, Fred
Did
will
you?
not be replaced. And if you
No.
notice that when certain people die, there's no replacement.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's
Other people come up who are good, but there's certain
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Such an
James
underrated
Brandon Lewis
player
is
also.
good, but it's upcoming. He's came. James Brandon Lewis. He plays very good tenor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we like him a lot.
Yeah. But speaking of saxophone players, when did your story with David S. Ware begin? How did that? Because you also played
In
together,
the
like
early '70s.
also that period already.
Yeah, oh yeah. Everybody
Oh,
was there. 501 Canal Street. I met Gene Ashton, also known as Cooper Moore.
oh
And they
yeah,
lived
sure. Yeah.
Ellen Christie. They all lived at 501 Canal Street. We used to go there.
Mhm.
And David and Cooper Moore had a band called Apogee. And they were going this way, and we had Moncur going this way. William Hooker was there. So it was
Yeah.
really, 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 really a good scene. I mean, you play music all day, all night, and
Oh, beautiful.
man, it was great. It was really good foundation, um, and you could practice and get your stuff together, and then lose it when you play.
Yeah.
And it was really like just a great period. Then later on, Frank Lowe came in.
Yeah.
Started
Wow.
playing with
Yeah.
him, and he had a different
Wow.
style. So it was, and then the Chicago musicians and St. Louis musicians and L.A. musicians came in. All about the same time.
Yeah.
David Murray.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it was great. Those call that the loft scene. A lot was happening.
Yeah. But when was the moment for you to become a band leader? When did you decide to do that? Like, okay, let's put.
Well, I had always been doing concerts since the
Yeah.
70s, but then I guess around the early 90s, kind of after I left Cecil, I began, I don't know if I recorded that record In Order to Survive
Oh
of
yeah.
Black Saint, but then I said, okay, I'm going to, instead of doing project, I'm going to try to keep the same band together. I also came up with the Little Huey Creative Music Orchestra, which I like to get cooking again, except, we can't get together right now. But and keep the same project, same as the Modern Jazz Quartet, Little Huey Creative Music Orchestra, in order to survive the quartet, Raining on the Moon, and stay consistent with those bands throughout the year, so you can build an audience and build something. So that's when that happened. And I always drift away and do other things. New people come on the scene. We have an organ quartet and sometimes a quintet when we add Rob Brown, and and then there's a rebuilding of the quartet. So it's very exciting period, even now in the pandemic, of what could possibly happen once this, once we get cooking again, once we get moving again.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow, cool. Thank you so much for sharing all these thoughts. Really appreciate it. Beautiful.
So we're done?
Yeah, I will not bother you anymore, so you can have a relaxed Sunday.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. Say
thank
hello
you so much.
to Barabor.
I will. Hope to see you soon on the road, William.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dr. Jazz.